The Trump administration is appealing a decision by a federal judge in Oregon temporarily blocking the deployment of 200 National Guard troops to Portland. Last night, U.S. District Judge Karen Immergut, a Trump appointee, delivered a setback for Trump's attempts to use military troops in some Democratic-run cities. Immergut wrote in her ruling that Trump's attempts to federalize the National Guard, absent constitutional authority, undermines the sovereign interests of Oregon. Quote, this historical tradition boils down to a simple proposition. This is a nation of constitutional law, not martial law. Defendants have made a range of arguments that, if accepted, risks blurring the line between civil and military federal power to the detriment of this nation. Joining us now is Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield. Attorney General Rayfield, thank you very much for coming to the weekend. Just first and foremost, your reaction to the judge's ruling last night.
I mean, it's a big win for democracy. It's a big win for all of us. Effectively puts, a marker down for the president, letting him know that he can't base his decisions or his facts when he wants to deploy the United States military in our cities on social media or the gossip that he hears in the world. You got to have real facts. And when you don't, we're going to hold the line in court.
A.G. Rayfield, I want to get your response also to Deputy White House Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, who is kind of leading on a lot of this. His portfolio is growing every day. A social media post he made on Saturday about this. He called it legal insurrection. The president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, not an Oregon judge. Portland and Oregon law enforcement, at the direction of local leaders, have refused to aid ICE officers facing relentless terrorist assault and threats to life. There are more local law enforcement officers in Oregon than there are guns and badges in the FBI nationwide. This is an organized terrorist attack on the federal government and its officers, and the deployment of troops is an absolute necessity to defend our personnel, our laws, our government, public order, and the republic itself. One, fact check him. There are a lot of claims that he made in there. But also, and most importantly, what do you think the purpose of this language is? Legal insurrection, and talking as if, your city is in the middle of a civil war.
This is the silliest thing that I've heard. I mean, this is a guy that is using inflammatory language, which appears the only purpose that I can surmise is they want to normalize the use of the American military in our cities. It's absurd. We were in court with real facts talking about how this facility had turned down help from the local police in the most recent month. It bears no resemblance to anything that these folks are saying on Twitter or whatever streaming platform that they're using. So it's a little bit strange. But again, I mean, this is the kind of the norm that's coming out of this presidency. The most wild thing for people to think about, you think about your courts of law as places where facts would reign supreme. But the lawyers for the federal government were coming in there quoting Truth Social. That's just bizarre. And it was confusing the judge. You're coming into a courtroom and your facts are based off of social media. But that's the norm that this president has established. It's incredibly dangerous. And that's why this ruling was very important. It's like, no, President, when you want to put the U.S. military on the streets, you got to use real facts and just not your gut feelings.
Attorney General, it's great to have the opportunity to speak with you on the heels of this breaking news. We appreciate it. But I want to go a little bit into sort of the legal process. Pardon me for sort of being pedantic about it. But the ruling today, I think, sort of on the heels of the news in Chicago, where the National Guard is being deployed, sort of makes me wonder why Portland was able to get ahead of the news. You filed a lawsuit on September 28th, but cities like Chicago haven't been able to act legally or in such a nimble way. Can you sort of walk us through how this came to fruition and what the thinking was behind closed doors and why Portland seems to be ahead of the curve here?
Yeah, and I would look across this country and the trend that is going on. We first saw this trend in California, then it was Washington, D.C., it was Memphis. They were already talking about Illinois, and we started getting rumblings in Oregon that this may occur. And so my instruction to our attorneys were, as soon as we get notice that orders have been given in formalizing this process, I wanted to be in court within 12 hours. We have amazing staff and attorneys at our Oregon Department of Justice, and we were in court in less than 6 hours, and we were pushing as absolutely hard as we could to get in front of a judge before those troops ever were deployed within the city. And that was our goal from the very beginning. And I think we were very fortunate in the way that the timing laid out, and also incredibly fortunate that you have dedicated people that work for the state of Oregon that were willing to sacrifice their weekends and evenings to make this happen. And frankly, we had a judge who recognized the importance of this and making sure that we were getting out as quickly as possible.
Well, sorry, Jonathan, that was going to be my follow-up sort of stupid question. Is that unusual for that speed? I mean, or were you guys just lucky?
No, I mean, it's not terribly unusual. When you apply for a temporary restraining order, which was the motion we used in this case, and effectively for folks that aren't really in the weeds on legalese, that's just basically a motion and an order that pauses the president's actions. And it happens very early on. It happens early on because you haven't really had an opportunity to dig into all of the details of the case. And so it's something that's temporary, it's short, it's quick, and that is why the judge was able to react very quickly and have a hearing on the facts to get us an order, pausing the president's actions. So that is a normal manner in which you can move forward. If you remember the birthright citizenship case, we had a ruling, I believe it was the very next day, on a temporary restraining order. So these things will happen, especially in incredibly important circumstances. And here, what we knew is that the deployment of the United States military, 200 troops into our city, was actually going to inflame things, not help things here in this city. And so for us to be able to get in front of a judge and talk about real facts, that there isn't a rebellion, that there isn't an invasion, that the president can effectuate the laws of the United States, was what was compelling for this judge to issue the ruling today.
Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield, thank you so much for joining us as we sift through this breaking news.